masterclass is entitled The Profession of Faith of the Apostles Profession of Faith. This is the theme that we are addressing today at this meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, dear members, clergy, dear priests, dear pastors and doctors, dear evangelists, dear prophets, dear Christian apostles, it would have been superfluous to have even the idea of a theme like this in the digital age. And after 19 centuries of Christian preaching, if the Christian gospel, of which you are the bearers, could have correctly addressed this issue, we shall see that the apostles' profession of faith has nothing to do with the current gospel of Christianity. In the beginning, when it pleased to the sovereign to undertake the creation of the universe in accordance to the plan and design that he had given himself in his own counsel without any external will, God created the heavens and created the earth. And it pleased him to complete the creation of the earth, and with that, human, which he then made freely in his own image, in his own likeness, according to Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. If the universe were a kingdom, and it is, since creation is the creator's property, the universe is the work of the eternal, the uncreated, then the earth, similar to a law-governed state, whose constitution, whose fundamental law is it is written, the scriptures. Under these conditions, the most decisive expectation of its preamble, one of the major tenets of the Constitution, of it is written, it would then be procreation. Procreation is the creation of human beings on earth through fertilization between two parents of opposite sexes. Procreation is the very first commandment in the Bible. Indeed, Genesis 1:28 prescribes, be fruitful. Procreation is central of God's plan for and in humanity. This is what emerges from the combined readings from Genesis 1, 2, and 28, Genesis 2, 18 to 24, but also Genesis 4, 1, 2, and 25. And we'll see that this is a permanent feature throughout the ages, whatever the generation. Since the introduction of procreation in Genesis 1:28, all God's men and women arrived on earth by procreation, all of them without exception. Procreation figures strategically and centrally at the heart of all five covenants of God's plan. Creation by fertilization is the basis of the Adamic covenant in Genesis 2, 3, 4. Procreation is the basis of the perpetual covenant with Noah in Genesis 9, 7 to 12. Procreation forms the basis of the eternal covenant with Abraham in Genesis 17, 4 to 7 and 17 to 19. Procreation is the basis of the Mosaic covenant. Procreation is at the heart of the new covenant inaugurated by Yeshua, the Christ of the prophets and apostles. The earth was given to man for a dwelling place in Psalms 115, 16. Procreation is the creation on earth of a son of man, or daughter of man, through a mysterious alchemy involving a triptych, a trio, a male progenitor, man, a female progenitor, woman, and God himself, in opting for procreation, but exclusively under his personal and direct authority, thus later intends to remain the determinant and guarantor of this trio, this triptych, in order to ensure to create only human beings in his image, in the likeness of God. And so human beings are men as they are because God is the original man, initial man, primordial man, the main man, the first man, the essential man, the reference man. The Creator has therefore, once and for all, established procreation in Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, Genesis 2, 18 to 24, Genesis 4, 1, 2, 25, without any form of delegation, without any form of subcontracting, as evidenced by Genesis chapter 4, verse 1, in order that human beings on earth remain men and women in his image, in his likeness, in accordance with God's original design recorded in Genesis 1:26. Nowhere in the Bible will you find a time when God derogates from procreation. Thenceforth constitutes an illicit trade any unnatural relationship between a woman and a spirit, because this link between two species is to contest legitimacy and exclusivity of copyright held by God over humanity, generating parallel creation in the process, in particular counterfeiting, which consists of humanoids, giants, and monsters, as in Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 to 7, where we see spirits strangely, abnormally, unduly seduced by women, by the daughters of men on earth, to the point of taking some of them as wives. Their wives bore them sons, i.e., these monsters, these humanoids, these giants who once triggered the flood. These giants, these humanoids, are the offspring of a duo, a spirit and one woman. Whereas procreation proceeds, is articulated around a triptych, a trio, one man, one woman, and God presides. The legitimate creator is not involved in the duet between a spirit and a woman. Giants born of a spirit and a woman are not images of God. The penalty by such illicit trade in Noah's time is the flood, the extermination in Genesis 6:1-7. We discover in Matthew 24:3-37 that the same trade was foreseen by the true Christ himself as one of the major events that should characterize the weather on its return.
Me.
Christian preachers are unlikely to make the connection between Matthew 24:37 and Genesis 6:1-7. Because the Christ they preach comes from a spirit and a woman. Presidency incurred by this spring, by this most grievous hindrance, which once triggered inconsolable anger, is, and already was, long ago, did the outright destruction, yesterday by the deluge. And